Welcome to Talkin SEC. Writer, photographer, and producer Phillip Jordan discusses all the latest in college football in the Southeast with the best analyst around. Now from the southeast corner of Alabama, a state that knows sports, here is Phillip Jordan.
What is the latest with Bryan Harsin and Auburn? Which SEC teams are poised for March? And which former SEC quarterback will hoist the Lombardi Trophy on Sunday? This is Talking SEC, and I am your host, Phillip Jordan, from Last Word on College Football and 96.9 The Legend in Dothan, Alabama, where I'm the in-studio host and producer, Dothan with Football. Jam-packed show for you guys today. We'll talk about those topics and more. And when we get to the Super Bowl segment of the show, we'll talk about those former SEC quarterbacks in Matthew Stafford from Georgia and Joe Burrow from LSU. I'll be joined by Matt Barbato from the Fantasy Pros and Betting Pros. I had a conversation with him on my NFL podcast earlier in the week, so I'm going to play our breakdown of the Super Bowl for you guys at the end of the show. But before we do all that, before we get into all those great topics, let me tell you where you can find me and the podcast. Of course, you can find me on social media at PJordanSEC. Podcast is on Twitter at Talking SEC Pod. Of course, you can listen to the podcast on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, wherever you get your podcast. And if you're on Apple Podcasts, please follow, rate, and review. Really means a lot if you do that. Helps the show out, makes more people notice the show. So please leave those reviews, rate the show. And if you leave a review, I will read it on a future edition of the show. And please share the show out on all your favorite social media. Word of mouth is the best way to get people to know about the show. Of course, you can also check out the show on YouTube as well, either on my personal YouTube account, the Phillip Jordan Sports YouTube page, or the Talking SEC has its own YouTube channel as well. Please go to either one of those, hit a subscribe button, hit the little bell for notification, and if you leave a comment on any of the videos, I will also read that on a future edition of the show as well. You can always email me at sportstalkphillipjordan@gmail.com. Now let's jump into our topics. All right, first up, the latest on Bryan Harsin. And when I talked to you guys on Monday, we talked about that with David Schultz from WNSP down in Mobile. And we did that conversation on Sunday. So it was very, very not knowing what's going on. Honestly, at this point, I'm recording this on a Thursday night. You're listening to this earliest possible time on Friday morning. I thought by this time we would at least know something. I actually thought maybe by Wednesday, when he got back from his vacation in Mexico, that we would at least have some kind of resolution to this. We do not. On Thursday, too, he did go to the SEC coaches meeting in Birmingham. And interesting, Auburn is trying something else to get rid of him. Apparently, they're going at all links here to find a new coach to get rid of Bryan Harsin and not have to pay that buyout, which is $18.3 million. He is owed 70% of his remaining contract, so that's what that would be if they were to fire him without cause. So that's why they're trying to find with cause. I mean, first, I don't know if it was true. The speculation from his personal life, we'll just leave it at that. And then abuse of the players, that was the thing also hitting last Friday and into the weekend and part of the investigation. And then now they have come out on Tuesday, put a rule or guideline or whatever about you have to cooperate with an investigation. And now that he has not done that because he stayed in Mexico, now it's looking at because they fired him cause because that. Now, look, if that's something you just put in, that's not something that was there prior, even him being coach or at any point to this. I don't see how that could hold up in court, but I'm not a lawyer. So any listeners out there that are lawyers, if y'all could help me out with that, please do so. And if anybody out there not living, that lives under a rock, does not know really the timeline of what's been going on here. Of course, Auburn went 6-7 this year. They hired Bryan Harsin after last season. You fired Gus Malzahn. Obviously, this is not the guy the Board of Trustees wanted. We all know that. You can see that. Auburn goes 6-7 his first year. They were 6-2. 5 straight losses, and one was the Iron Bowl. And let's be honest here. If Auburn beats Alabama, we're not even talking about this. This is not a discussion because for Auburn, and I have been critical of Auburn fans, Auburn people for this. And this comes from the guy that covers the team for Last Word on College Football. They make so much of a big deal about the Iron Bowl. I think as long as they beat Alabama, they're happy. Like, I honestly believe this. Auburn could go 11-1. Their only loss in the regular season beat Alabama. win the SEC championship game, go on into the college football playoff, win the national title, they would not be happy because the one loss was to Alabama. And we've seen Alabama be okay in that situation where their one loss of the year was to Auburn because they did it a few years ago when Auburn beat them to get into the playoff. Of course, that's when they beat Georgia. Tua comes in the second half and they win the title. We've seen Alabama. They're fine with national championships. That's where Alabama's at. Auburn's just about beating Alabama. That needs to change. That's one thing that's always having a problem. But continue, of course, he had the players have left the program. 2 OCs. He fired Mike Bobo at the end of the year, which I was never a big fan of the Mike Bobo hire. I'm just seeing everything he did at Georgia and South Carolina and other spots. I was not a fan of that hire. They fired him after Iron Bowl. Austin Davis, who is the Seattle Seahawks quarterback coach, was going to come as offensive coordinator. All signs pointed to he was mostly just going to be the quarterback coach, title offensive coordinator. Harsin would have been calling the plays. I think this was one that really created, this is one of the many ones that created a red flag with Harsin. When a defensive coordinator, Derek Mason, left to go to Oklahoma State, basically, and he took a pay cut. He went from making $1.5 million a year at Auburn to $1.1 million a year at Oklahoma State. Of course, then on signing day last week, didn't sign anybody. He did not sign a single player. In fact, you had a receiver hit the transfer portal, so you lost more players than you gained on that day. And that's supposed to be when you gain players. Now, the early signing period, they signed 18 players there, but on last week, on traditional signing day, they did not sign. So there are a lot of things working against Harsin here. Without a doubt. I mean, I'm not going to say not, but I also believe that this is all about the board of trustees. This is Alan Green's guy. Alan Green went and got Harsin. He won that power struggle last year, him and the president. They made this hire. I really believe, and look, I don't have inside information. Don't know anybody up there just on the board. This is just me going through stuff, reading stuff, listening to people who know a lot more about what goes on in Auburn than I do, that this is a board thing, and they just don't want Harsin there. So we're on, like I said, this recording on Thursday. We're going into Friday, and we're going to jump to some SEC basketball here in a few minutes. But another part of this that's interesting to me, college game day, the basketball version, is at Auburn Saturday for Auburn and Texas A&M. And I look at that. Now, like I said, that's for basketball, but you're going to be on campus, and those fans, Auburn fans, are rowdy as it is. I wonder if they're going to try to have their voices heard against the higher ups at Auburn. I wonder how that's going to go. I mean, none of that could happen, but that's intriguing to me on Saturday with game day being there at Auburn and in a way giving the fan base a way to verbalize, express themselves. So that will be interesting. Now, if they do, and I just feel like we're eventually coming to a point where Harsin steps down, they fire, or something happens. They're going to part ways. I do not think Bryan Harsin will be the coach for the Auburn Tigers when the season kicks off. I just don't believe that. And they need to hurry up and do something because it's not long until spring practice starts. But some names floating around for Auburn, though, to look at if they do move on from Bryan Harsin. Hugh Freeze seems like to really be the hot name, which I think is a good fit. You know, he obviously knows the South, beat Nick Saban twice, which they love that, which they got rid of the coach to beat him 3 times. He is, of course, the Liberty head coach right now, done wonders there. Look what he did with former Auburn quarterback Malik Willis, Gus Lahan-Walt. But you saw some interesting stuff on him that an article I read that said he did not read, he wasn't big into the film stuff there at Auburn, and that's kind of what led to him not being the guy. But anyways, Hugh Freeze, obviously he has a checkered past. That will be the hang-up for a lot of people. Kevin Steele, of course, Auburn defense coordinator from 2016 to 2020. His head coaching record is not good, 9-36 at Baylor from 1999 2002. Now, let's look at this now. Defensively, Auburn was always good under him in the SEC. In 2016, they were second in that conference. 2017, they were third. 2018, they were fifth. 2019, they were fourth. And then 2020, they were fourth again. This was a guy that the board wanted. This was the guy it seemed like was going to get the coach. Then the trend on Twitter stopped that. It felt like there was some momentum to say no to Steele or stop Steele, something like that. So that didn't happen. Then you got Jeff Grimes. His name has been thrown out there all over the internet that he would be a potential candidate. He's the Baylor offense coordinator his first year. They were fifth in total offense in the Big 12 this past year. Of course, they were the Big 12 champions was Baylor. First in rushing there in the Big 12 under Jeff Grimes. He was Auburn offensive line coach from 2009 to 2012 under Gene Chizik. So he was part of that national championship team, which if offensive line is his big thing and running the ball, that'd be big for Auburn because obviously the running game and what he could do with that. And let's just say, I'm not going to get too much into this. Lane Kiffin, because whenever a job opens up, it seems like Lane Kiffin is a candidate for it. So I'm sure you'll see somebody trying to push that narrative too with Lane Kiffin. So it's going to be interesting. We'll see. We'll have a podcast on Monday. That is the plan. So we'll see what happens over the weekend with Auburn football. Now let's transition to Auburn basketball real quick. And then we're going to talk some more football for my conversation with Matt Barbato has played. Auburn basketball, they were upset by Arkansas on Tuesday night. Of course, Auburn number one team in the country, 80-76 in overtime. Auburn still undefeated in regulation, 22-0 in regulation. Their 2 losses are in overtime. I was very impressed with Arkansas. Of course, Arkansas now has 9 consecutive wins. Hottest team in the conference. I know some Kentucky people will maybe argue with that. 9 straight wins. They're playing really well. There's a lot of teams right now in the SEC playing well as we are in mid to late, going into mid to late February anyways. And then, of course, you want to be playing your best heading into March. Kind of like the NFL, you want to be playing your best heading into the playoffs. There's a lot of SEC teams that seem to be doing that. Arkansas did a great job really on the perimeter with their defense. Early on with the point guards, KD Johnson, he never got going. And I really feel like, especially when Auburn is on the road, Johnson is really key to their energy. He brings a lot. He can, sometimes when the rest of the team is down, he can lift them up just his energy, his intensity. He's always bringing 100%. He just couldn't get going on Tuesday night. Wendell Green early on, they were giving him some issues. Now he found some ways, to make some shots, get some penetration, hit those lobs to Walker Kessler. Kessler was amazing once again. 16 points. He hit 2 threes in this game, 19 rebounds, 7 blocks. He fouled out in overtime. That was really a moment in that game. I really felt like when I was watching us, okay, Arkansas is about to win this. It just felt that was a big momentum boost, him fouling out at that point. I think the game was still tied. And Auburn had a 5-point lead around 2 minutes left. They wet the bed in this one. I mean, they did not make the plays a number one team in the country should make at that moment. And they have not played particularly great since they've been ranked number one. You almost lose to Missouri. You almost lose to Georgia. Those are not two good teams. Now, Arkansas is a really good team, and that was a tough environment. The wide out, packed out house there at Bud Walton Arena. Just tremendous there. Now, Jabari Smith, he had a solid game, 20 points. He was 6 of 16, 3 of 8 from 3. It took him a while to get going. He struggled early in the game, and then, look, he's a true freshman, going to be one of the top 3 picks in the draft, one of the best players in the country. I'm not sitting here, and I want people to listen to what I'm about to say. I want to understand I'm not trying to take anything away from what he does. He is a tremendous, tremendous player. But sometimes to me it feels like he disappears. And for him to be the guy, and I honestly think this is something NBA people will look at, a guy that can take over a game. And I know Auburn is deep. Bruce Pearl talks about that. They go 10 deep. That's a big part of who they are. Get that. But this is a game on the road. You need your best player to take over at points. And he tried at the very end when Auburn got down in overtime. He hit some threes, made it interesting there. He needs to do that more often, I believe. And then sometimes I do think he falls in love with the jumper. Look, he's 6'10". Go to the basket, create some stuff around there. I know Kessler's down there, but do some other things. So he's a tremendous talent. The best recruit Auburn's ever got. But there are some improvements there in his game, I think, he can look at. And with Auburn, this could be a blessing in disguise for them losing this game. Now that pressure of being number one is not on them anymore. They can maybe go back to kind of how they were playing before they were ranked number one, more loose. Because I feel like sometimes they were playing tight. That pressure of being number one, because they're just not used to that, may have got to them at times. Now, I will say this too. They miss Zep Jasper at point guard. Need to get him back. When Wendell Green had to come out, and then you basically played Alan Flanagan at point guard. Flanagan is a terrific player. I know he's still recovering from his injury, but terrific player. He seemed to struggle in that role to me. He made some turnovers. So they need to get Jasper back to kind of help out with that depth there. Now, once again, I know I've talked a lot about Auburn here. Arkansas once again, and also J.T. Note, terrific game. 28 points, 3 of 9 from 3. He had some big threes. key part of this win. Terrific player. Yeah. So, I mean, Arkansas playing really, really well right now. And they're going to be tough. It's going to be tough. You got some solid teams in the SEC. And going into this week, in the latest bracketology from Joe Laurinardi, he had Auburn and Kentucky both at number ones. Tennessee would be a 5. Bama would be a 6 seed. Arkansas would be a 7. So would LSU. Florida would be a 12. And he's got Mississippi State first 4 out. And that kind of goes into one we'll talk about next, some big games in the SEC. And real quickly, not going to spend too much time here. Auburn is playing Texas A&M Saturday. I mentioned game day is going to be there. A&M comes in losing 7 games in a row. So this is a game where Auburn can get back on track. Of course, we'll see what the rankings are next week, but you have to feel like they probably lost that number 1 ranking. Arkansas, which they're 19-5, they play at Alabama 15-9. That's another 11 o'clock game over. Now, that'll be on the SEC network. Alabama ended their 2-game skid. They beat Ole Miss on Wednesday night, 97-83. J.J. Shackelford had a big game, 30 points in the game. He hit 8 3-pointers. And this could be a game where Arkansas is feeling pretty good about themselves. You just beat the number 1 team in the country. You know, you're still celebrating that victory over Auburn, and then you go to Alabama and you get beat. I would not be surprised if Alabama wins this game. Florida, that's another team. Like I said, they are right now projected as a 12 seed, 16-8. They're at number 5, Kentucky, 20-4 in a year. Kentucky has won 5 straight since they've lost to Auburn. Florida is on a 4-game winning streak. Really pretty big resume-wise for Florida if they could pull this one off. This is a 3 o'clock over on ESPN. The Mississippi State, first 4 out, they need a victory. They're playing at LSU, 7 o'clock, ESPN2. I'm leaning LSU there, but Mississippi State really, really could help themselves big time with a win in this one. And then just a couple little news items before playing my conversation with Matt Barbato. Missouri will be now looking for a new defensive coordinator, flipping back over to football. Steve Wilkes is out. He's headed back to the NFL. He will be on the Carolina Panthers staff. Of course, he was a DB coach there from 2012 to 2016, defensive coordinator 2017. Of course, then he went on to be head coach at Arizona for only 1 year. Then they bring in Kingsbury. Missouri's defense was not great this year, though. They were 13 in the SEC, giving up 445 yards per game. They gave up almost 230 on the ground. A lot of teams very, very easily ran on Missouri this season. So, interesting where they go defensive coordinator-wise. And then Alabama has added to their staff. They've added an analyst. Former LSU quarterback Zach Mettenberger to join the Alabama staff as an analyst. 30 years old, looks like he's calling it quits playing football. Of course, he spent 3 years with the Titans. He was in the Alliance of American Football, and he also played in the Spring League. So it looks like he is going the coaching route. So I guess we will not be seeing him play in the USFL this spring. So that is just some news items, some thoughts going around the SEC. And like I told you at the start, I had a conversation on my NFL podcast with Matt Barbato from the Fantasy Pros and Betting Pros, breaking down this Sunday Super Bowl, of course, which features 2 former SEC quarterbacks in Matthew Stafford and Joe Burrow. So I'm going to play that for you guys. It goes 34 minutes. We have a deep conversation on the Super Bowl, and there's a couple of the NFL topics in that conversation as well. But heavy on this matchup, and we talk a lot about Matthew Stafford and Joe Burrow. So here is Matt Barbato from the Fantasy Pros and Betting Pros. Everybody joining me on the podcast today, a longtime friend of any podcast I do, it is Matt Barbato. You can check him out at the Fantasy Pros and Betting Pros. We're going to be previewing the Super Bowl here. Matt, first time we've done a video podcast. Good to see you after all these years of talking to you over the phone. Appreciate you jumping on.
I know, first time on video, but I feel like it's tradition now with the Super Bowl. It seems like last few years we've gotten on the phone, or in this case on the computer, and talk. So looking forward to doing it again with you, man.
I know last year when I was doing Talking Pro Football, you were on when we got to talk about Mr. Brady a little bit going into that one.
I was dead wrong on that one too.
I think I picked Tampa Bay last year, but I thought it was going to be close. But I think I remember saying the defensive the tackles for Kansas City being out, which that's going to be a key in this one. And I'm sure before the season you had Cincinnati making the Super Bowl.
No, I kind of thought Cincinnati was maybe a sneaky team to maybe win their division, but no, I never saw this coming, and that's been kind of the season. It's just been, we've said all along, there's been no dominant team. I remember talking in the midseason, there's no dominant team, and that's kind of what prevailed in the playoffs. It was sort of a battle of who could screw it up the least, and those are the last two teams standing right now, the Rams and the Bengals. They found a way to not get in their own way.
I think I titled that episode you were on midseason. I said, who is good in the AFC? I think that was because that's when Kansas City was still struggling.
Right.
They hadn't hit their streak they hit on. And then the Bengals were good, but they were losing against probably teams they shouldn't lose to. The Titans were doing this. The Jets did beat the Titans and the Bengals this year.
That's what I'm saying. It's just been a wacky year.
Yeah, it's just been one of them years, and and with the Rams, they're built for this game. This is where they're supposed to be. And I was talking to somebody last week. I said the thing about it, everybody wants to congratulate Matthew Stafford. They got there with Jared Goff. They could probably get to a Super Bowl with him. All right, Matthew Stafford, this is where I think the pressure is now on because they brought you here to win it, not get them there because they got there with Goff, to get them to win it. And I think that's where this whole game, too, it's like the Bengals. They're early. They shouldn't have got to this point this early. They're ahead of schedule. So I feel like all the pressure in this game is on the Rams.
Oh, yeah. I mean, what are they going to do if they lose this game? You're not
at home. At home.
Yeah, not that I don't know if there's like 50 actual LA Rams fans in LA, but you're in your home stadium, you're sleeping in your own bed all week. Like this is what they built this team to do to win the Super Bowl. I can't remember. I think it might have been SVP and Stanford Steve kind of compared it to they are built like an NBA team where they are just a team of stars. And this is the moment, like you said, that it all has to pay off. The guys like Aaron Donald and Von Miller and Odell and Jalen Ramsey, all these guys that they brought in, and now they don't have a first round pick until like 2025 or something. This is if they win this game on Sunday, it all pays off. And if they don't win this game on Sunday, it could be a nasty fall off for them. Maybe not next year, but like 2-3 years down the road, the Rams could be one of those teams circling the bottom of the drain in the NFL.
Yeah, it feels like almost, and maybe this is overreaction on my part. If they lose, there's going to be overreactions on the Rams side. It's like, okay, we built this team to do this. Like you do see, like if you see an NBA or Major League Baseball team build a team with free agents or draft or trading players like this, they don't blow it up. But it's like, okay, we got to do something drastic because something's not putting us over the top. I kind of fear with the Rams, maybe that's something like that may happen if they don't win it on Sunday.
Yeah, I mean, and the worst part is they don't have many draft picks to really flesh out the rest of the roster. You could say, they just need a couple pieces here and there, and they do. They are not a deep roster by any means, but they just don't have any cap space. They don't have any draft capital to address those needs. I mean, I'm not a big NBA fan, but look at the Brooklyn Nets right now. They were supposed to be the team to win it all last year, and now they're trading James Harden apparently, which I don't really know much about the NBA, but I was like, wait, I thought this team was all in going for it, and now they're trading one of their big three pieces. And yeah, like you said, the Rams could undergo a similar teardown because unless they want to go 5, maybe 10 years of being horrible and irrelevant, they might have to do that for the best of the franchise going forward.
And, going into this game, too, Matthew Stafford, he's played great. Only one interception, that tip pass against the 49ers. 6-1. He's a guy that you saw points even this year that he had them times where he would throw a couple interception games. I think the month of November was very bad for him, but he's 72%. Of course, finally, and it is nice to see with him getting to the Super Bowl, getting success because obviously the talent was always there. Just, who's going to win in Detroit? I mean, it's just not happening. What's been your take on Stafford here in the playoffs and how he's played versus kind of we saw some up and down play in the regular season?
I think he's been great. I mean, you look at that Tampa Bay game, especially. He was phenomenal in that game, and I don't have his exact stat line in front of me, but he was the one guy who didn't make the mistake. It was Cam Akers dropping the ball twice. It was the horrible snap from the center. I can't even recall all of the blunders that the Rams made in that game, and none of them involved Stafford. I mean, I remember when they played like Tennessee in the midseason. I can't remember who the other game was it was against San Francisco where he threw the back-breaking pick 6 on Monday night. And you would look at that Rams game, that Rams-Buccaneers divisional game, and ask yourself, how did the Bucs get back into this down so much? you would have thought, oh, Stafford threw him back into the game. No, he was great. And then he delivers that beautiful pass to Cooper Kupp. Say what you want about the coverage. It was a terrible decision by Todd Bowles, and that's why he'll never get hired again as a head coach, to go zero coverage there. But, I mean, you still got to deliver that ball. And then you got to have the wherewithal to get down and clock it for the game-winning field goal. And he's been really good, and I think that's a testament to what Sean McVay's done from a game planning perspective. And, he's been able to curb himself and limit those turnovers. And, the big gunslinger decisions that he's made have paid off generally. I think he's been phenomenal. It's obvious he's the front runner to win Super Bowl MVP. And I think if he puts up another performance like he did against the Buccaneers, he'll easily win it. So, and it'd be deserved, because he would be the playoff MVP right now, I'd say.
And you got to think that if he wins the Super Bowl, he's kind of a lock for the Hall of Fame.
Yeah, it's a huge legacy moment for him. I mean, if he just gets that one ring, and then you look at his stats from what he did in terrible Detroit, where he only had Calvin Johnson for a handful of years to throw to. Yeah, I think he'd be pretty close to cementing it. I've thought about that. I've wondered because I don't know what his exact contract situation is, but I've thought about the potential of Stafford maybe just riding off into the sunset and calling a career after this.
We're going to talk about a quarterback that may do that later, which we've had several. Tom Brady and Ben Roethlisberger.
He may be too young, but I mean, what else does the guy have to prove?
That is true. Hey, he can go back to Detroit and just say, hey, I went and got a Super Bowl. I'll come back for you guys.
That's like the Tom Brady meme I kept seeing around, is like it's him photoshopped into a Jets jersey, and it's like, okay, your final challenge before you retire, Tom, win a Super Bowl with the Jets. Maybe that's what Stafford will do with Detroit.
How does somebody? Okay, we're going to go off top a little bit. I've seen that meme. As somebody who has covered the Jets, as a fan of the Jets, how does that make you feel seeing that meme?
It's sad. And you know what? The worst part is, I think if Brady came here, he still wouldn't win one. It would be the one team he would go to where he wouldn't win. Kind of like how Brett Favre, he has a stint with the Jets, and after a great career with the Packers, and he just can't get it done, and then he goes to Minnesota and leads them to he was an interception away from the Super Bowl. So, you know what? Tom would probably go to New York, spend about 6 weeks, and go, "This ain't for me. I'm really retiring."
Yeah, I remember that year with Favre. I mean, everybody knows I'm a Packer fan, so that's no hidden secret here. I just say this: weren't they like 8? They were 8-3 that year, and his arm was practically almost about to fall off, and then they lost like a bunch of games toward the end of the year. I remember they were like the best team in the AFC at one point. That year.
Yeah, I think they lost like 6 of the last 7 or something down the stretch, and I think they might have even finished under 500 or 8-8. So yeah, that's life as a Jets fan, baby.
Well, I will admit this. I have never admitted this behind the microphone. I bought Jets gear that year.
Oh, because you're a big Favre guy. Okay.
I don't know where it's at, but there is a Jets visor somewhere in a box.
I still have my Favre jersey from when I was a kid.
I never got the jersey. I didn't get the jersey, but I did have the Jets visor, and I think I had a Jets T-shirt that I would wear on.
Printed out the when he was on the cover of Madden that year because they thought he was retiring, and then they like had a downloadable one where he was in a Jets uniform. So I printed that one out and like stuck it into the inside cover of the game. So I was all in on Favre, and of course it didn't work out for us.
I was too. Well, anyways, we have got off track. That's my fault.
I'm sorry. That's bad. The Jets just get us to that point. They always seem to tank whatever you're trying to do. So,
but we now know we have more of a common bond now that for one year, and I knew what it was like to be a Jets fan because the way I did it, the Packers and the Jets did not play each other.
Yep.
So I rationalized I was a Favre fan, but I was still a Packer fan. So I supported the Packers. But when the Jets were playing, I was rooting for it. I don't know what I would have done had they played each other in the Super Bowl. Would have been. I would have been that person that wore like a half Packers hat. I don't know what I would have done.
No, you can't be that guy. You got to pick a side one way or another.
Now, when he went to the Vikings, I kind of was like, okay, Brett, I hope you have a good year, but lose to the Packers. That was my mindset for this. But
Brett.
And going into this match, on the Bengals side, I mean Joe Burrow. I mean, of course. What he did in college, I mean, year 2 and now year 2, and really not year 2 because he played 6 games his rookie year,
yeah,
and then going through that injury, going through what he did this year, and then they go get Jamar Chase. Look, I was against that draft pick. I'll be honest. I thought Penei Sewell was sitting there.
I was too.
Get an offensive lineman. And obviously, it's just amazing what they've been able to do despite that bad offensive line to get to this point. I mean, you got sacked 9 times against the Titans. But they keep finding a way. I mean, it's just the Cinderella story with the Bengals. What they've been able to do has been quite impressive.
It has been, and it's amazing. Zach Taylor had won 6 games as Bengals head coach, and then all of a sudden they go 10-7. They win what I will say was a down AFC North. Let's just throw that out there as a disclaimer. You had the Ravens were banged up before the season even started, and then the Steelers were, with Big Ben, just were never a threat, and then Cleveland just couldn't get it together with Baker. So. They've found ways to win. And I don't know. It's just, again, they are the team that really has just sort of figured out a way to just kind of get through these playoffs without shooting themselves in the foot. The Raiders, the Raiders, if Derek Carr doesn't clock the ball on the 10-yard line at the end of the game on first down, maybe they go in and score and tie or win the game. The Titans, Ryan Tannehill threw 3 interceptions in that game, a couple in the red zone, I think. They kind of threw that one away, and it came down to a last-second field goal. And then the Chiefs game, I'm watching this game, and I just don't understand how Kansas City is letting this happen. And that's not to diminish anything that Burrow and the Bengals have done. They've still made plays, and Jamar Chase is awesome, and they have a bright future, no doubt. It's just it's just shocking to me that they're here with a coach that I've never believed in and a quarterback behind a horrible offensive line. It's truly a Cinderella ride.
And the thing with Burrow, and it dates back to LSU. Even his first year at LSU, he went into Auburn and won.
Yeah,
his first year as the starting quarterback there, and that's not an easy place to go in and win.
Right.
And then what he did his second year, 19, winning, all the records he broke. He's the kind of guy I think his confidence leaks off into his teammates. Mm-hmm. And there's no moment. I just don't think he cares. It's just to the point where I say don't care is that no moment's too big for him. He's just going to go in there. He's going to play ball. He's going to do the right things. You don't see him make a lot of stupid throws, like bad throws. And that's kind of like going into this game. It's kind of weird saying it. Of the 2 quarterbacks you think that could lose the game, I think it's Stafford, not Burrow. Yeah. I don't feel like this moment's going to get too big for Burrow. I don't feel like he's going to make the big time mistakes that are really going to cost the Bengals on Sunday.
Yeah, I think I agree. If there was a prop on who's more likely to throw an interception, I think I would say Stafford. And imagine Burrow's psyche. You come out of winning the national title at LSU, you have this meteoric rise after transferring to Ohio State. Then you get drafted to the Bengals. And then you're having a good rookie year, but then your offensive line, who didn't protect you all season and got you killed all season, finally delivers the final shot. And you, what did he suffer? Torn ACL, pretty much destroyed his knee.
Yeah.
And just the psyche that he's had this season to come back and play as well as he has and just play with so much confidence and moxie. And just, I thought the way he was able to get the ball out fast against the Chiefs in the AFC title game was excellent. And that might be the way they can neutralize the Rams in this matchup. But, man, you get the snot kicked out of you by the Titans and you keep coming back. And it's just – I think he's going to be one of the 5 best quarterbacks in the league. And, this could be sort of a turning point moment for him. It's very interesting. I can't believe how they're here, but it's just Joey Burrow magic, I guess.
So looking at the matchup, obviously everybody's pointing to the Bengals offensive line versus the Rams defensive front with Aaron Donald, Von Miller going to come off he's going to give pressure to as well. Is that for you the biggest matchup, or is there any other matchups in this game you're really looking at?
I want to see what the Rams do in coverage, and obviously Donald, Miller, Leonard Floyd against that Bengals offensive line will probably be the key matchup, and it's a big part of my thought process for this game. But unlike the Chiefs, unlike the Titans, unlike the Raiders, the Rams have a guy who can go one-on-one with Jamar Chase. And I'm not saying he's going to win the battle, but I think he can limit Chase more than what these past teams have done. Now, the Rams do play a lot of zone coverage, so I'm curious to see how they handle that. But I think at the very least, you're going to see Ramsey shadowing Chase wherever he lines up when he lines up on the outside. And if they opt to go man coverage, I mean, Chase is a monster, but Ramsey is one of the best cornerbacks in the league, and I would give the veteran the advantage in that matchup. So that's what I'm very curious to see. How do the Rams sort of handle their coverage? Do they stick to sort of their zone and just rush with 4? Do they maybe get a little bit more aggressive and send some blitzes after Burrow, something he's kind of exploited all year long? How do they sort of handle their back end? Because outside of Ramsey, it's not the best secondary in the world. And, they've got Eric Weddle signed off the street. I think a couple of their key players like Taylor Rapp might get back for this game, but they're hurt too. So that's going to be the key to me because it's not just Chase either. It's T. Higgins. It's Tyler Boyd. If Uzama plays, he's a threat in the red zone and short distance passing. So the Bengals have arguably the best receiving core in the league. I want to see how the Rams counter that.
Hey, and then you got Joe Mixon out of the backfield.
Yep. They have a lot of talent. I mean, it's pretty remarkable the talent they've assembled on the offensive side of the ball so quickly. I think T. Higgins personally could be a number 1 receiver probably anywhere else but maybe Cincinnati and Kansas City. He's an immensely talented guy, and that's their number 2. So how are the Rams going to sort of scheme against that? Are they going to send Ramsey on single coverage and maybe bracket Higgins and say Tyler Boyd, C.J. Uzama, Joe Mixon beat us? Are they going to play their traditional zone and just hope that Burrow doesn't pick him apart and hope that Donald and Miller get to him fast enough where he can't pick him apart? That's sort of the schematic matchup is what I'm really interested in.
I'm intrigued what the Bengals do on defense too as well. The defense they went with against Kansas City where they pretty much rushed 3, had one guy spy and just dropped everybody else. Obviously, I don't think you do that against the Rams because, Matthew Stafford pretty stationary in the pocket. I mean, he can get out and make some plays, which is like if he has to, but that's just not his game. So, how the Bengals will go about this defensively, you got Trey Henderson. Can they get some pressure on Stafford, maybe force some mistakes, with Stafford? I think it's intriguing what the Bengals do defensively because they've kind of showed different looks throughout the entire playoffs, whether, just based on who they've been playing.
Yeah, they really have. And I think it's going to come down to can they get pressure with 4? Because if they're forced to blitz, Stafford is going to destroy them. I'm just looking it up now, and Cincinnati was one of the teams that blitzed the least in the NFL last year or this year. So that was sort of my big handicap with the Buccaneers game and why I like the Rams was the Buccaneers blitz at such a high rate, and Stafford's been such an effective quarterback against the blitz this year, and that pretty much came true. I think it's going to be a different case with the Bengals defense. If Hendrickson can get home, if that defensive line can win up front, it might cause Stafford and the Rams offense to have a pretty long day. But other than Hendrickson, I don't know. I just don't see the talent on that side. The Rams offensive line has been really sturdy all year. They've been reliable in pass protection. And I kind of think the Rams are going to win that battle in the trenches.
Yeah, another thing, like you said, if you have to blitz, that means now you're putting your DBs on an island. Yeah. And that's something you do not want to do against Cooper Kupp and Odell Beckham.
Right.
That's. We saw it happen to the Buccaneers when they blitzed. They went all out on that, and you leave Cooper Kupp 1-on-1. He's probably going to beat whoever you have on him most of the time if you're in that situation.
Yeah, I agree. I think, and it's kind of interesting that the Bengals, for all they've done, everyone says they've really drafted and developed, and that's true. But it's mainly on the offense. The defense is a lot of free agents like Hendrickson and Chidobe Awuzie and Eli Apple and all these cast-offs. From other teams who have sort of cobbled together a decent unit, and I rely on do you rely on DVOA a lot?
Mm-hmm. I've seen some stuff with it, yeah.
Well, kind of, yeah. It just sort of ranks teams based on it adjusts for schedule essentially and quality of teams you've played. And it surprised me last week when I had to do an early betting preview for Betting Pros. It surprised me to see that Cincinnati was only ranked 19th defensively in DVOA and 24th against the pass. So that's something to sort of monitor too, is can that Bengals secondary contain not only Kupp, but Odell and, maybe even Van Jefferson downfield.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting. Like I said, both with secondaries. How that's going to work. Because these are two good receiving cores anyway. So how that goes down is going to be interesting. So now we lead up to who you like in the game. And this one for me has been hard because you can go with your mind or your gut. It's two different teams for me. I know the Rams come in, they're 4.5 favorite. Like I said, they're home team, but not the crowd part's not, I think, the big part about that. It's just they're more comfortable. Like you said earlier, they're sleeping in their own beds. They're not, having to travel like the Bengals. The over-under this game is 48.5 points. Where are you leaning at as we record this on a Wednesday heading to the Super Bowl?
So, Phillip, last year I made the mistake. I when you asked me to come on, I kept thinking about our conversation last year, and I kept saying, yeah, the Buccaneers have really good pass rushers, but I don't know if it's going to matter. It's Patrick Mahomes. Well, a year later, we found out that it matters, and I can't make the same mistake. And I'm not just picking this game based on what happened last year, but it's sort of a similar logic. The best unit in this game are the Rams, maybe not the Rams receivers, but definitely the Rams defensive line is probably one of the top 2 units in this game. And the Bengals offensive line is probably the worst unit in this game. And I just, I think that's a matchup that the Rams will exploit. I'm definitely worried about Joe Burrow just saying, I don't care. I can get sacked 18 times in this game. I'm still going to deliver the ball. But Ryan Tannehill isn't on the other sideline this time around. It's Matthew Stafford. And I just think the Rams, like we said at the beginning, were sort of built for this game. Their stars match up well with Cincinnati. You've got Beckham and Kupp who can exploit a kind of weak secondary. You've got Donald and Miller who can sort of cause havoc against a weak Bengals offensive line. And then you've got Stafford, who I think, he might be the guy who can lose you the game, but I also think he has just as high of a ceiling as Burrow does, if not higher, because of the experience. And I just like the fact that the Rams and McVay have been here before. And I don't trust Zach Taylor very much. I love Burrow. I love Chase, but I think when the pressure's on, I don't know if I trust Zach Taylor over Sean McVay in a Super Bowl. So I am going with the Rams. I haven't bet on it yet because I don't like the number at 4.5. I'm hoping to get it maybe 3.5. I don't think that's going to happen, but maybe some Bengals money will push it down. But my pick would be the Rams, and then I think I would take the under, actually. I could see this being kind of a grinded out, low-scoring game, especially in the first half. I actually like the first quarter under a lot at 9.5 points.
So I'm going to let everybody know where I'm going with it. My head, everything I know about football tells me to pick the Rams. But my gut says don't pick against Joe Burrow.
Yeah.
I've seen him in college, seen what he's doing in NFL. I'm going to go with the Bengals. I don't know how they're going to do it. I mean, obviously the offensive line is going to be an issue. I mean, all that stuff. I mean, I feel like my head should be saying pick the Rams, but I don't know. I'm just going to go with my gut on this. I think the Bengals are going to upset them and win the championship.
You know what? In a year where it seems like everything has kind of just been thrown out of the window in terms of conventional wisdom, I wouldn't be surprised if it was just Joe Burrow, and that's all that matters, And we could look back on this Bengals team 10 years from now and go, how did they win a Super Bowl? But that's the thing. I mean, all you got to do is just win one game. If there's a quarterback who is I would trust to win one game right now, other than Tom Brady and maybe Rodgers, Burrow's definitely up there with the way he's delivered for the Bengals consistently despite all the adversity. I just think if the Bengals sort of get into a rut where maybe they don't score for a couple of possessions, unlike Tennessee, unlike the Raiders, and the Chiefs did it to them in the first half, they could get buried, and it's going to be a lot harder to climb out of a 21-3 hole in the Super Bowl than it will be in the AFC title game, I think. So I'm not saying the game will get out of hand, but going with the Rams, I'm trusting the team that's been there before with the quarterback who I think, will deliver one more great performance to his potential Hall of Fame legacy.
We'll see. It's going to be. I think it's going to be a good game. Things going to come out to the wire. And before I let you go, of course, this all season it's going to be all about the quarterbacks. There's going to be a lot of quarterback conversation, not necessarily drafting quarterbacks. Quarterbacks on rosters or going free agency. Will they be traded? Stuff like that. So, rapid fire. I got 5 quarterbacks named wrote down here, and I'm going to ask you, where do you see them playing in 2022 season?
Oh boy,
we're going to start off and. This would have been 4, but some recent news added a 5th quarterback, Kyler Murray.
I think he's going to be in Arizona. I don't blame him for wanting to get away from Cliff Kingsbury, but you're a little too young and you're a little too unproven to be sort of pulling your weight and trying to get a trade. I mean, I understand that Cliff Kingsbury is not a great coach, but this offense didn't have DeAndre Hopkins for a big chunk of the year. I don't see the Cardinals doing anything with Kyler Murray. I think they'll do what they need to make him happy.
All right. The second one, Jimmy Garoppolo.
That's a hard one. So I was telling you off air before we started, I wrote down a list of teams just off the top of my head that needed quarterbacks. And I have Washington, Philly, Miami, Pittsburgh, Houston, Indianapolis, Carolina, Denver, and Las Vegas. I don't think I'm missing anybody there.
Green Bay might need one.
Green Bay may need one, but I think they're going to stick with Jordan Love. Otherwise, I think I covered the obvious names. I'm going to say Jimmy Garoppolo is a Pittsburgh Steeler.
Okay, I've seen that one float around. A lot of people say that should be someone they should go get because the roster's kind of built to win. And Jimmy Garoppolo has shown when the parts around him are good, he can get you, he can get you far.
Yeah. No, the Steelers definitely need to rebuild that offensive line, and maybe Garoppolo is not the best fit because of that, but they just endured a season with Big Ben, who is never going to move out of the pocket. So, and I think Garoppolo might be the cheapest to get. Like Pittsburgh has the 20th pick, so they may be out of reach for a rookie, maybe not in this year's class, but like you said, the roster is kind of built to win now with that defense and Najee Harris and some good weapons on the outside. If they can kind of quickly rebuild the O-line, Garoppolo may just cost them like a second or third round pick, and you can kind of plug him in and then maybe worry about your future in the draft and find that rookie later on.
So the third one, he made news last year on the Dan Patrick show around this time, Russell Wilson.
I put Wilson down for Philadelphia.
Wow. Okay.
I think I am, and maybe this is just me being biased against Jalen Hurts because I just have not liked him all year, and I kind of faded him a lot in fantasy football. I kind of think the Eagles are looking to get out of the Jalen Hurts experience. And when I look at how their team is situated, I mean, they made the playoffs this year. And while Hurts is definitely a dynamic athlete, I think he's a step below his most common comparison, Lamar Jackson, as a passer. So I could see a deal happening where maybe, Philly sends Hurts and two of their first-round picks to Seattle, who desperately needs to sort of reload their roster, and maybe a couple other draft picks, and they get Wilson, who has a similar skill set. He's not quite as mobile, but he's a much better thrower, and I think he would do much better with Sirianni and what that team's got.
So next up, the fourth one, the greatest regular season quarterback to ever play the game, Aaron Rodgers.
Yeah, and I would say, honestly, he's not the best. He's not the GOAT. That's Brady, but in my opinion, he is the best pure passer in the NFL, like the thrower of the football. He is the best. This is the one that I said off air was going to maybe surprise you. I'm going with Indy. I think Indy realizes that they were a quarterback away from being a serious Super Bowl contender. I could kind of see the Colts and Chris Ballard maybe going the route of pushing the chips in. They've got a great offensive line right now, but we know just by looking at Dallas's offensive line how quickly that can deteriorate in just a couple of years.
Yeah.
They've got the young stud in Jonathan Taylor, who's still fresh and is still on his rookie deal. And I think with a couple tweaks to the roster, they could be a Super Bowl contender. They're just that quarterback away, and Wentz limited them so much. I know Denver's the conventional choice here, but I don't know. I just think Rodgers kind of controls his fate in this a little bit too. And I don't know if he wants to go to a division featuring Mahomes and Justin Herbert. I think the AFC South is a much easier path to at least a playoff berth. And I could see the Colts, they traded away a first-round pick for Carson Wentz this year. I could see them really pushing the chips in and going all in.
What will you be in your mind the odds of him returning to Green Bay?
If they had just won that 49ers game, I would probably say it's like 50, 60%, but right, I would say like 25%. I think there's a little bit of hope that they work something out, but just the way things ended with that team, and now they're sort of in a position where they kind of have to rebuild it or at least restructure that roster a little bit. They're probably going to take a step back. And Rodgers said he doesn't want to be a part of that. So I could see the Packers just blowing it up, and he's the first sort of bomb to go off.
And then finally, this last guy, this is all requiring, all the legal stuff gets sorted out and everything. But if Deshaun Watson is playing football this upcoming in 2022, where do you see him playing?
Okay, if he's playing football, I would say Carolina. Okay. I think he'd be a good fit with that offense with Christian McCaffrey. His mobility, along with McCaffrey in the backfield, could make for some really, really cool offensive designs. I think Carolina is another team that could be pretty decent if they just had the quarterback sorted out. I don't know their exact draft situation, but they've got the 6th pick this year. That's a start for a trade, and maybe they make a move, assuming the legal troubles get worked out and they can get a discount for him. So I would go Carolina for Watson if he's playing. If not, if his legal stuff hasn't been cleared, he's still in Houston.
Yeah, so it's gonna be a fun offseason with these quarterbacks, because the quarterback draft class does not look all that good. So what we got coming out of college is not as good as we've had the last couple of years. So obviously, you can upgrade through not free agency, but trading. So it's gonna be interesting. It's gonna be interesting Super Bowl, and Matt, I appreciate you taking the time. It's been a lot of fun. Once again, previewing the Super Bowl another year with you, talking these quarterbacks. If the listeners and viewers wanted to get you online, where can they find you on the work you're doing?
Yeah, so you can check out my work at fantasypros.com and bettingpros.com. And then you can follow us at fantasypros, at bettingpros on Twitter. And then you can follow me at real Matt Barbato. Are you interested in a few props before we get off?
What you got?
All right. So this is going to be a little predictable. I'm going to say Cooper Kupp over receiving yards. I think he's at like 106 right now. I just don't see the Bengals shutting him down. They might be able to limit him, but he's going to get his. I also like his over longest reception at 27.5 yards. I think he's going to connect on a deep shot with Stafford at some point in the game. And then another guy who I'm buying on, T. Higgins. Like I kind of said, I think Jalen Ramsey is going to be focusing on Chase. And I expect T. Higgins to have a big game because of that. So I like his over. I think I got 60.5 receiving yards. It might be a little higher now, but I like T. Higgins a lot. And then first quarter under. 14 of the last 22 Super Bowls, the total in the first quarter has been fewer than 10 points. So teams sort of start to start that game slow, sort of feeling things out, maybe nerves come into play. So I'm anticipating a low-scoring first quarter, and then maybe things get explosive as the game goes on.
All right, that sounds good. I like it. The Cooper Kupp one, especially, with him. I mean, I feel there's probably a bunch on him going into this. Mr. Triple Crown, it feels like Al Michaels pushes out more than any other broadcaster here in the playoffs.
Yeah, but
obviously the Triple Crown winner in Cooper Kupp. But anyways, Matt, this has been a lot of fun once again having you on, and I look forward to doing this again sometime down the road.
Phillip, you know where to find me. I'm always happy to come on. Thanks for having me.
All right, everybody, and that is going to do it for this edition of Talking SEC. Thanks again for everybody checking out the podcast today. I hope you enjoyed this listen, however you're listening to it. Please follow me on social media at PJordanSEC. That really sounded like I was begging there, but come check me out over there. You can follow the show on Twitter at Talking SEC Pod. Of course, podcast is available on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, wherever you get your podcasts. And if you're on Apple Podcasts, please follow, rate, and review. Leave a review. I will read it on a future edition of the show. You can also check out the podcast on YouTube, Talking SEC YouTube channel. Hit that subscribe button, hit that bell, and leave a comment. And I'll also read that on a future edition. You can always email me at sportstalkphillipjordan@gmail.com. Hope everybody has a great weekend. We'll see if Auburn still has a football coach when I talk to you guys on Monday, and which SEC quarterback is Super Bowl champion. Hope everybody has a great weekend. Till next time. Bye-bye.
Thank you for listening to Talkin SEC. Follow Phillip on social media at PJordanSEC and the show at Talkin SEC Pod. Subscribe to the podcast on Apple Podcast or wherever you get your podcast. We'll see you next time when we're Talkin SEC.